cry. My god, this does not feel like real life. I cannot explain how fearful I have been of telling anyone. And he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm just so scared. So that's pretty much what I've been dreaming of doing for the last 3 years. So I done the test this morning and we got our first ever positive pregnancy test. Hi guys, and welcome to today's video. Today I am filming a very exciting video. It's going to be a long one. If you want to pause and get a cup of tea, please feel free to. I have got a giant bottle of water. I've gone back to my Stanley recently and I am here to film a video that 6 months ago I could only have dreamt of filming, and it is my first trimester video because we are pregnant and expecting our first baby February next year. And the reason I'm filming this video is because when I was in my first trimester I very much found comfort in these sort of videos. But honestly, if you are down a rabbit hole like I was just looking for these videos, I would recommend at some point consciously not spending all your day watching them, because I feel like that really affected my mental health, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But equally, I think I have a relatively positive story to share with you. Before I get into my first trimester, I think it's important that we touch on my trying to conceive journey, because I think, and of course, that shapes my first trimester a little bit. Decided to start trying to conceive in February 2022, which is when I turned 30. It wasn't working for us. Maybe slightly less than a year, we started doing tests on the NHS and privately, but essentially nothing really showed up as an issue. The NHS, very much, their attitude to it was just do IVF. That will definitely work for you. Almost like don't bother doing more tests. But I have got a whole video on my IVF experience with the NHS, which generally was positive. Although not having positive outcomes, it was a positive experience. Long story short, we started our IVF journey properly in September of last year. So September 2024. I think our egg collection was October 2024. We ended up with lots of eggs, more than I think anyone expected. All of them fertilized admitted to day 5 bar 2. So incredibly thankful for. And we were told by the embryologists, 2 embryologists, that they don't see embryos like this very often, which of course I was over the moon about. However, I did get mild OHSS and we weren't able to do a fresh transfer, so we transferred later in the year. We got a negative pregnancy test. And then we tried again earlier this year, and again we got a negative pregnancy test. So it means we had 2 failed IVF transfers. Something else that I think maybe is a bit abnormal from our situation is that I chose to pretty much tell no one that we were doing IVF. Family didn't know, my friends didn't know, pretty much no one knew. But we were ready to do our 3rd transfer. Our 3rd transfer was going to take place, I can't remember if it was June or July, I actually can't remember, of this year. So like 3 months ago. But the month before, we successfully conceived naturally, which blows my mind. People say they dream about being a mum and being pregnant for their whole life, but we were like actively seeking it out for years. And I think to a certain degree envisioning it, wondering if maybe that would help. Actually get that positive pregnancy test felt, honestly, it felt impossible. It just felt unreal. I don't want to cry. I think pregnancy is probably always hard, but pregnancy after loss, fortunately I've never experienced any loss. Touch wood, like that's not on the cards for me, but I understand that is always a possibility. But also pregnancy after infertility I think is also very, very hard. Spoken about much less, I think. If you are trying to conceive or in your first trimester, I'm sending you all my love. I really do know how hard it is. So I have a video that I filmed the day I found out I was pregnant, but I will insert that here. Please take it with a pinch of salt, because I had just found out I was pregnant and I just couldn't believe it. My period was due this morning, and generally I don't like to test unless my period's late, but there's something about today that really made me want to test, because to be honest, my period does come consistently every 28 days. Today's 28. Yesterday I had some spotting and I thought it was just like the spotting that I get before my period comes, but my period didn't come, and like usually it would come the next day. It doesn't really take that much longer, and the spotting was quite intermittent, like it wasn't really getting heavier. I had diarrhea yesterday, which I do get if I'm getting my period, but it's usually like as my period comes. It's not usually like with no period. And I don't know, there were just like little things that made me want to test. So I done the test this morning and we got our first ever positive pregnancy test, and I can't even believe that. I woke Mike up and I was like, should I do a test? And he was like, it's up to you. No, I think he said just do one. I came in and I was like, I think we're pregnant. He said I didn't say anything for ages. Like usually I just come in and I'm like, oh, we're not. He said, but you just didn't say anything. And honestly, I'm like terrified because I feel like you have to check with the second test. I'm really scared. I was gonna wait for Mike, but I don't think I need to. Gosh, I'm gonna be so sad if we've got a false positive. One thing I will say is that Mike keeps asking me like, do you feel like your period's coming? He was asking me this before. I'm like, I don't know what it feels like to be pregnant, so I can't tell the difference between the two. My God, this does not feel like real life. I honestly, I feel like I can't even believe it. Like, we have been doing this for years. We've gone through IVF, like it hasn't worked, and then somehow, I honest to God cannot even believe it. I just don't understand. Like, I'm literally in the toilet every 10 minutes like, oh my gosh, is that my period? I honestly, like, what the actual fuck? Oh, unbelievable. No, this morning it said pregnant instantly, and I was like, well, that's odd. But it was like one of those really cheap tests, and so I feel like I just didn't believe it. But we actually are. I have a bit of spotting at the moment though, and that's kind of freaking me out a tiny bit. But apparently that's completely normal, so I'm just gonna take it as being completely normal. I know it's crazy for me to be filming this vlog on the day that I got a positive test, but I just don't want to forget what I have to say. So we were on Monday, so today's Friday. On Monday we were supposed to be starting a third round of IVF, and we were going to try a natural cycle because the doctor I spoke to last time basically said that there's no real reason why a natural cycle wouldn't work for us. Let me tell you, I did not believe that. Well, it's not that I didn't believe that, but I was struggling to believe that. I kind of convinced myself that I wasn't ovulating, but the doctor said like there's nothing wrong with you. Like, I have 28-day cycles, very consistent. So in 3 days time we're supposed to start, and my period was supposed to start today, and so I was supposed to like go in for my first scan on Monday. A month ago now, when my last period started, I had decided that I just wanted to give it like one last go. And I discussed this with Mike because I felt like it had to be a team effort. It couldn't just be me doing this. Basically, I discussed that I just didn't want to be having processed carbs as much. Typically, I would just have a slice of toast and some eggs every single morning, and I cut that out. That was like my big thing that I've cut out. I haven't gone back to that at all. I haven't had biscuits. I cut out crisps, so I'd have crisps, like a small bowl, most days, maybe like 5 days a week. Like, none of these things I was doing excessively. I was only having like one singular slice of toast, a small bowl of crisps, a couple of biscuits, like nothing crazy. And there's nothing to say that this is it. If I asked the NHS, they would say that we've just been unlucky and that's just a numbers game and it's just a waiting game. Mike took his vitamins. I'm gonna leave the vitamins link down below. This is like the one thing that NHS was recommending to us, and it did make a change with Mike's morphology. It definitely increased. I didn't have baths, I just had showers, especially in my fertile window, and Mike also was having more showers than baths. Again, I'm just gonna tell you what I done. Like, I'm not claiming any of these things are it. I took my folic acid and my vitamin D a little bit more consistently. I would take both consistently anyway, but like occasionally I would forget, but I just took it much more. My magnesium I would take on and off generally. I took it almost every single day. I added in CoQ10 sometimes. That one I don't think I was that consistent. I ate more protein. I am having 3 eggs a day generally. That's actually the only extra protein I added in. I was probably having 1 before, and now I'm having 2 extra eggs, but it's just a little bit more protein. Having a little bit less carbs, probably a lot actually in hindsight. And I was eating just more fruit and veg, just thinking about it a bit more. So instead of eating a small bowl of crisps, I would have sometimes nuts, but often strawberries. Strawberries are a big thing that we've been eating in the last cycle. 10 days after ovulation, so that's like 4 days ago. It was on Monday. I had really bad cramps. I've also been very cranky. We've also joked that, like, of course my period's coming. Yesterday I had a spotting, but usually my spotting like progresses, like it starts light and then it gets darker as it goes, and then I was expecting my period to start today, but it just wasn't doing that. Like, it wasn't thickening, it wasn't getting like redder, it was just old blood colour. But that is kind of what I get before my period starts. Yet last night I had diarrhea, and I was like it wasn't awful, like I wasn't running to the loo. I'm sorry, this is TMI. And I do sometimes get diarrhea when my period starts, but not like before my period starts. It'll be like at the same time, basically. As my womb starts to contract, my period will I will also get diarrhea. But then yesterday I got it, and I wasn't on my period yet, and I assumed it was just a change in hormones. And then this morning it was 28 days. My period does come pretty consistently every 28 days, and I just, because of the spotting yesterday, it doesn't make sense for it not to have come today, and so that's why we done a test. Well, why I suggested doing a test. Yesterday I was just feeling so bloated, and I don't think I often feel that bloated. Like sometimes I feel full because I eat a lot, not overly bloated. My lower back has been really sore, and a couple of days ago, like I've just been feeling like ever so slightly off, like shaky is the word I would use. I think I've even said to Mike, like, oh, I just feel like really wobbly. Equally, that could have been anything. I get really bad breast pain. I think my body's just so sensitive to hormone changes. I think before my period comes, usually my breast pain is really bad. In the past, I've gone to like, I had my breast scan numerous times because the pain is so bad, but I would say I just have like ever so slight light breast pain, nothing crazy. On my Fitbit, my resting heart rate is out of my normal range, it's a little bit higher than usual for the last 2 days, and I still have a tiny bit of spotting, but I don't think it's abnormal. And honestly, I've just felt like a bit ugly. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but I've just felt a bit like gross. My bag's been particularly bad, but I had a busy week actually. This is the busiest week I've had in ages, which is why I just think it's a bit funny. Like, my womb just feels a little bit sore, and that's scary because it's hard for me to differentiate between being pregnant and cramps and like period cramps naturally, I think. But like, we really held out hope this month, oddly. Or maybe, yeah, I think he would totally agree. But he would always ask me like, do you feel pregnant? I'd say like, I don't know the difference between pregnancy and period pains. I'm just scared, and my womb just feels like a little bit tender is what I would say. So it doesn't feel like period pain, but equally doesn't not feel like period pains. And I don't know if it's my womb or if it's like my intestines or like something around there. Like I said, I did have diarrhea yesterday, so I'm really struggling with that. But overall, I am happy. Like, I am excited, but equally I really do feel like it's scary. And like this morning I was just crying, and Mike was like, why are you just crying? Like, it's so exciting. We only done one test this morning. He wants to know if I've done the second test, which I have, and was positive. And he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm just so scared. Because I think it's so important to remember, we've been doing this for over 3 years. We have done 2 cycles of IVF, and this is the first pregnancy test, first positive we've ever had. And I don't even know what to do now. I have to like contact the hospital to let them know that I got a positive test, but I don't want to let them, I'm not going to my appointment on Monday, but I don't want to tell them that in case like I don't have a positive pregnancy test on Monday, and so I still would like to see them and get started on the next cycle, which I don't think they'll let me. I don't know, fingers crossed, touch wood, it's all gonna be fine. We used to have a February baby. I'm born in February as well. And I was on the tube earlier, there was like people with their little baby on board badges, and I was like, oh, same. I've done it.
You've done it?
Oh. Woo! Insane.
That is crazy.
I honestly feel like sick that we're even pregnant.
After everything.
Maybe it was you cutting out sugar.
Maybe.
Now, I will say that getting pregnant, the symptoms feel quite similar to the symptoms of getting a period. And I had obviously had 36 months at least of kind of analysing that 2-week wait. I do think at the beginning I wasn't analysing it lots, but towards the end I was really analysing every single last symptom I would get in my 2-week wait, or like my whole cycle basically. I really think that I knew I was pregnant. Maybe I kind of didn't believe it because obviously IVF hadn't worked twice for us. Like, why would we suddenly conceive naturally? I feel like in my heart of hearts I knew I was pregnant. When people say this, I'm like, do you really? But I really think I did. I remember standing in my corridor in the mirror and saying to Mike, like, look at my belly. I was so bloated that I genuinely looked more pregnant than I do now. I'm just shy of 20 weeks now. I was so bloated, it was insane. I also remember standing in my kitchen and getting really bad cramps, but maybe like 5 days before my period was due, and I had a very consistent 28-day cycle. And I remember saying to Mike, like, it feels like my period's due, but it's way too early. Like, I don't typically get cramps this early on. Maybe it was a week before. And I remember like standing in my kitchen and feeling like really shaky and saying to Mike, I just feel off. Like, there was just like lots of little things that just didn't feel right, and just felt like, oh, maybe I'm pregnant. But it turns out we were in fact pregnant. Now I'm gonna go through like week by week in a minute, but I think the one thing that everyone always asks about is nausea. Now I would say in the grand scheme of things, I didn't really have any nausea. I would say my nausea was a 2 out of 10, which considering there are people that have nausea like all day, every day for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, that was not me. My worst symptom was that I was really tired, and like next level tired. I haven't experienced tiredness like this. It was extreme. My nausea would be, for example, if I hadn't eaten anything in the morning, I would feel like a little bit, again, just like a 2 out of 10 nauseous. Sometimes like smells, sometimes like the idea of food really would like bother me. Like I just never was in the mood for anything, but then when it came to actually eating it, I could eat it, but I couldn't really cook it, and I just, like, honestly it sounds stupid, but I just couldn't think about food for too long, because then I just wouldn't want to eat that singular thing. People would ask me like, well, what do you want to eat? And I'd be like, mate, I don't know, like you have to decide, because I can't think about it. I didn't tell people I was pregnant for a while, so I wouldn't explain that, but I'd be like, I don't know, like you just need to pick. To Mike, I'd be like, you pick, you put it in front of me, I will eat it. I didn't really have proper nausea. I was never like in the bathroom for ages or anything like that. I know people have a lot of issues about being sick, so maybe skip a little bit if you have like a fear of throwing up, or you just don't want to hear about me throwing up, because despite me not having nausea, I threw up a fair amount, because I would basically start gagging, and like the silliest things would make me gag. It kind of got worse at the beginning of my second trimester, so I think I'll talk about that a little bit in that video. But for example, the smell of oil, could not deal with it. I would start gagging. I wouldn't always throw up, but I would start gagging. And luckily it was much worse in the morning, so there would kind of be nothing in my stomach to throw up. I would lightly throw up. It wasn't really from nausea. Often it was literally, it was just like a gag reflex that was just like so sensitive that anything would make me gag, and then that would just set me off, and I would potentially throw up or have to like really concentrate on not throwing up. Brushing my teeth used to make me throw up. If I could brush my teeth without thinking about it, I would be fine, but if I thought about brushing my teeth, that would be game over. And also if I was really tired, then I would be nauseous. So it would kind of be like in the morning or really late at night, and that would be it. Luckily I could go to bed early most of the time, but I'll come on to the fact that I did go on holiday at the end of my first trimester, and we had stuff like weddings and parties, and there were days where we'd have to go home late because it was the end of a wedding, and I'd literally be like, guys, to whoever's in my car, like, guys, you cannot talk to me, because if you talk to me, I will throw up. And I don't know why, it was just like I was just so tired. Like having to think was too much and making me want to throw up. But actually I never threw up in the evening, I don't think. I would start gagging, but I managed to kind of breathe through it. But I did throw up a fair amount. More so start on my second trimester did I like properly throw up, but we'll talk about that in that video, because in my first it was like light throwing, a lot of gagging basically. But week 4, so basically the week I found out, I'm not really a pregnancy test sort of person. I would do them if I had to because of IVF, but otherwise honestly I've very rarely done pregnancy tests, because my period is so consistent that I felt like I didn't really need to. This time I was like, something's happening here that is not normal to me. I had issues regulating my temperature, so I was just boiling basically, to the point that maybe a couple of days before I found out I was pregnant, my mum said to me like, what's wrong with you? It looks like you look like you're going through your menopause. Bear in mind she didn't know that we were trying to conceive. I was so hot. My Fitbit told me that my heart rate was a bit higher. It hasn't gone down either. I think you just get more blood when you're pregnant, and so your heart rate increases a little bit. Then I done a test. I went to the loo in the morning. It was like 6 in the morning, and I was like, I just need to know, because I had had that diarrhea the day before, and in my heart, like, I just knew I was pregnant. And maybe, I think Mike would have liked me to have told him like this really lovely way. That was not the case. It was like 6 in the morning. I woke him up and I was like, Mike, we're pregnant. Can you believe it? And then I just cried. And honestly, I have cried out of fear so much in this pregnancy. I don't want to cry. I was so scared, because we had never ever had a positive pregnancy test. Amazing. But how is that even possible? How is that possible, having done two rounds of failed IVF, having tried to conceive for so long, and it finally worked? Like how does that make sense? It just blew my mind. It's funny because whenever people ask about him about it after, he's like, I was literally asleep as she told me. Basically didn't even get a chance to react. He was like, I was just, am I dreaming this or is this true? But obviously after we were we were scared but also excited. It was crazy to me. This wasn't the case because we ended up having to do other scans. It was crazy to me that I would have to wait for 2 months for the NHS to actually confirm this for me. I think if you get pregnant through IVF, they confirm it for you much earlier. I think as soon as you find out, you get to do a test. But because we conceived naturally, that wasn't the case. We would typically have to wait till 12 weeks. And the other thing is that if you conceive through IVF, you take injections and stuff throughout your pregnancy. I couldn't help but really worry that maybe I needed those, because I would have had them had I conceived through my other rounds of IVF, but I didn't have them this time round, so that was a bit worrying too. I was just obsessed, like truly obsessed with watching these sort of YouTube videos, because I don't know, I just wanted to like confirmation, and somehow I thought I'd find it in these videos that everything would be okay. I think because it felt to me that every announcement online was talking about their rainbow babies, and that like would I be able to get my would I be able to have a baby, I guess, without having to go through that? That fear just really like built up. But of course the percentage wise of you having a miscarriage is still way less than you not, and I think that is something that is so important to remember. Like, of course there's always that possibility, but it's much more likely that doesn't happen and that your pregnancy goes well. It was hard for me to understand that. It's more likely that your pregnancy will go well, and try to enjoy it, because I feel like I kind of haven't really, because I've just been nervous. And the other thing I done endless tests. Well, not endless, but I've done a lot of tests. I tested every single day for a while. Then I started testing like every other day, and then I started testing like maybe like every week, maybe for a while. I did have one of those like big boxes of pregnancy tests, because it came with my big box of ovulation sticks, and I bought cheap pregnancy tests, by the way, largely. I did also get a couple of expensive ones just for a little photo, but I really do like the cheap pregnancy test. There was like one day where my like line was a bit lower, and then from that day on I like stopped, because at some point I do think the hormones change and you can get a slightly lighter line, because essentially you're looking for like line progression, and I really used that for reassurance until that one day, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop doing it, because I googled it and it said that everything's probably fine, it's just that your hormones are changing. And then I would also go to the toilet endlessly to check that there was like no bleeding or spotting. I would wipe myself so much that would make me bleed. So I wasn't like bleeding from inside, I was bleeding from outside, which like in hindsight sounds crazy, but I doubt I'm the only person in that position. Week 5, I started to not sleep as well. I was just anxious, very light nausea, my digestion was still slow, and that was giving me like stomach cramps, which was then causing me to be very anxious. Awful anxiety. I've done nothing for 2 weeks. Comes from infertility. I think for the last like 2, maybe 1.5 years, I would say, I feel like I've struggled to be productive basically the entire time, because I've been like so obsessed with like trying to conceive. And when I finally conceived, I was like obsessed with googling pregnancy and stuff like that, which sounds stupid, but it was definitely an issue for me. Yesterday I had like the lightest bit of spotting, like honestly nothing, similar to what I had when I was implanting, what I thought was implanting bleeding. And then today it's just been like ever so slightly heavy. It's still really light and brown, it's not like proper blood colour, but I'm just so stressed. And then I called up the hospital kind of hoping to just have reassurance, and she was like, just come in and we'll scan you. I'm not even 6 weeks, and she was like, we can still scan you. And I was like, oh. So I'm gonna go. I'm so scared. I called Mike, I was like, should I go? And he was like, if you want to. And the lady on the phone was really dismissive. I said, like, should I come today or tomorrow? She's like, well, if you want reassurance today, come today. I was like, okay. I was kind of worried to tell me like it's probably nothing, but that's not what happened. This is a service I think all NHS hospitals offer. So if you have like any issues, you can't just go in for a scan, but if you had some spotting, which I did, they will scan you. You have to wait. I think we waited like 2 hours, 2 and a bit. I was about 5.5 weeks when I was scanned, and she said to me like, we might not be able to see a heartbeat because it's so early. And it was an internal scan, but I'm totally used to internal scans, because going through IVF, I had internal scans every other day for a really long time. I went by myself because Mike was at work. He didn't meet me, like he just made the ultrasound appointment, but I don't even think he got to see the heartbeat. But I think he got to just about see like the little blob that you see at like 5.5 weeks. She confirmed that the embryo was fine. It had implanted where it should have implanted, and that she could see a heartbeat, which was obviously really reassuring. But she then said to me that I had ovulated 2 eggs but she couldn't see the other egg, which does make me think, like, am I always ovulating 2 eggs? Is there potential that I have twins? Which twins kind of run in both sides of my family, so I knew that was somewhat of a risk, but it's kind of weird to have a doctor confirm that. And then she said, like, oh, I can't see the other egg, potentially it could be in your tubes. Ectopic pregnancies aren't that common, I don't think. I knew that was a risk, and it was a risk that I was very, very aware of, so that really did stress me out. It was great to see that the embryo was in the correct positioning, but inevitably I was a bit worried that I'd had a little bit of spotting, but it really was the tiniest bit of spotting, and it was brown, not red. And naturally I was worried that I could have an ectopic. I was like, should I come back in a week? And she was like, oh no, if it's an ectopic, you'll know before a week's time, like you'll be in extreme pain like soon, sort of thing. And I don't know, I found her a bit unhelpful. Generally I can only say really great things about the NHS. I have very few negatives, but I feel like that experience wasn't overly positive, if I'm honest. It was great. I'm really glad that service is there. She offered me a little bit of reassurance, but equally really stressed me out. Everything was fine. Week 6, very light nausea again, so like 2 out of 10. My nipples were sore, not my boobs, my actual nipples. I like got out of the shower and wrapped myself in a towel, and the towel, or it felt like sandpaper. I wrote, stopped watching YouTube endlessly, thank God. Like that really messed with my anxiety and stress. Stopped doing that. Tired, starting napping. My back was sore. That hasn't been a consistent actually. And then I had sore legs. Week 8, my legs were sore, but like next level sore. Like I didn't know what to do. It was like the core of my legs was sore. It was so weird. It was awful. And we told my parents. I cannot explain how fearful I have been of telling anyone. Like, bear in mind that I didn't tell anyone that we were trying to conceive at all, pretty much. I didn't want to tell people bad news. And although I feel like it's not my job to protect other people from news I have no control over, essentially, I was really scared that I would tell people that we're pregnant and then have to tell them that we're no longer pregnant. I was so terrified about that. But equally, I knew if that were the case, I would need the support. I personally, until very recently, and still I have told like very few people that we are pregnant. Mike has done all the telling, and he's also been the one encouraging me to do to allow him to tell people. And I felt that it was important for me to tell my parents, because you just don't know what could happen, and I wanted them to know. I don't know why I'm crying. I also said to them, and like, this is something I have said to literally every single person that I've told that I'm pregnant. I have told them it was really hard for us to conceive. We went for IVF twice, it didn't work for us. I think like it's something we need to talk about much more. Oh, I'm so sorry. We told my parents over dinner. It wasn't like an openness. It was just Mike said we've got some good news, and my dad was like, obviously I knew that you were going to say that you were pregnant. My mum was like, I had no idea what you guys were going to say. I'm like, how could you not know? And she was like, I just didn't think you were trying to conceive. I'm not trying to be mean towards my mum, but she had put so much pressure on me about like having kids soon, and I always assumed that she thought we were trying to conceive. But she was like, Sabrina, I honestly thought that you were like still waiting to try, because that had kind of been my go-to when people would ask me. I would be like, oh, I've got time, but don't worry about it, we'll get around to it, sort of thing. But really what I meant to say was like, we're really fucking trying and it's really fucking hard. Sorry, I don't even know why I'm swearing. We told her about the IVF and she said like, I'm really sorry, like I had no idea. I wouldn't have put that much pressure on you had I known. And the reason I'm kind of telling you this is because like, I know naturally sometimes we want to ask, and I think there are like okay ways to ask. It doesn't always bother me, but it bothers me when people are like, oh, when are you gonna have a baby? Like, you're in your 30s, like hurry up. Like that bothers me. Not like, oh, would you like kids? Like I have had people ask, even people that I'm not overly close with have asked, and it's been like in a really nice way. Whereas I just feel that there are like different ways of doing it. Week 9. Smells. Why does everything smell so bad? We also done a private scan. Private scan suggested that we were a couple of days more ahead than what we thought we were. Everything was fine. This was the second time we saw the baby. In hindsight, I don't know if I would pay to see the baby early again. Having seen it at 5 weeks, I don't know, maybe just because of anxiety, I think maybe I probably would. We had our first midwife appointment at the hospital. It was a good experience. Mike came with me. I don't think I'll go to all my midwife appointments. He hasn't been to my most recent one. I think he was off that day anyway, so it felt nice to have him there. They do speak to you without your partner first. Unfortunately, they have to kind of check that you're safe in your relationship and that sort of stuff, and then I had to do a blood test. I waited 2 hours for that blood test. Honestly, I wasn't even bothered. I just have throughout this felt very fortunate to be in this position, and like no waiting can kind of put me down sort of thing. It was a long time. I was really hungry is what I would say, but apparently that's not the norm at this hospital. Everyone was saying that that's definitely abnormal. They haven't really waited longer than 15 minutes, so I was just unlucky. I feel like the light is changing. It's the middle of September in London. I feel like it might be raining in a second, so it's dark. It doesn't look like it, but it's 3 p.m. I'm gonna try and not cry anymore. And then I don't really have that many notes for like week 10, 11, 12. We told Mike's parents because we were going away, so we weren't going to see them again until like week 16, so that felt like too late to tell them. We told Mike's brother for exactly the same reason. The day before I went to Portugal, I told 2 of my cousins that were going to travel with me. I might have needed their help to like lift a suitcase. I might have been sick because we were getting up early, like I just wasn't sure, and so we told them. It was very nice telling people. Everyone was very excited. My 18-year-old cousin, he was probably the most excited, I would say. Weirdly, like everyone was shocked. I honestly thought that everyone had like an inkling that we were trying to conceive, but I'm shocked that everyone was genuinely shocked. The day before we went on holiday, we had our 12-week scan, which was a couple of days earlier than 12 weeks because we were going to be away when we actually hit 12 weeks. That was an NHS appointment, and honestly it was a bit of an annoying one. When we went in, they told us that the fetus was basically too small for them to take measurements. I've now had other private doctors tell me that like there's no way that was the case, and actually like we also thought that wasn't going to be the case because of the other private scan we'd had told us we were a little bit further ahead. I think maybe I should have asked like can another doctor have a go at measuring, because I think it was possible. The doctor we did see, it's not going to be possible, which then meant that we also couldn't do like any blood tests for like preeclampsia, for Down syndrome, and for there's a couple of other bits that you test for. They did recommend that we do it privately in Portugal. Of course it cost us a fair amount of money, but like nothing too crazy, and we were happy to do it. But I would have rather it been here, not because of the money, but because it just would have been nice to have like all my records together. And I just honestly, I do trust the NHS, and it kind of comes down to that to a certain degree. We are Portuguese, just kind of add that in, so it wasn't like we were doing it in a different language, or we were doing it in a different language, but a language we're pretty fluent in. When we got to Portugal, we told like the rest of our closest family, of my closest family. Over dinner we told my brother, my cousins, and my auntie and uncle. I don't know why I'm crying. Again, it was Michael. Oh, but this one we handed my uncle the ultrasound. We were all at dinner, and I said like, guys, like, I've got a photo to show you. But it was probably like, I don't know, 12 of us or something. And so it did, so like some people didn't quite understand what was going on, but it was nice. Like one of my cousins like burst into tears the minute she saw the ultrasound. Again, we did say like, oh, we went through IVF. 2 of my cousins had found out the day before, so they didn't react. So one of my cousins was like, what's wrong with you guys? Why aren't you excited like me? I just feel like very, very, very fortunate. And like that's been something that's been quite hard throughout, is like I feel like I've had my village ready for really long. To finally be in the position that I could tell my village that we're pregnant is really, really special. Sorry guys, the lighting is crazy and I'm crying. But at this point we're probably about 12 weeks pregnant. We then had to go and do a private scan in Portugal, which was such a faff because private hospitals in Portugal in August are particularly busy. It was like hard to get a referral. We basically had to pay like, I don't know, almost 100 euros just to be referred, like not for the actual appointment. We did get like really in-depth photos. The doctor we saw was, I was like, I want to be tested for preeclampsia, and he was like, oh, like don't bother sort of thing. He was like, if you're pregnant you have a risk of preeclampsia, like just like if you're alive there's a risk that you could die. Knowing now that it doesn't really help the situation, so we didn't test for preeclampsia, which maybe is fine. We were also like doing an R-ing, like do we test for Down syndrome, because that's not going to change our decision, but we did test for that because I think regardless of it not changing the outcome, it's nice to know those sort of things. But everything was fine. We waited something crazy like 5 hours for a blood test. We didn't have to wait like in the hospital. They would say like, come back in an hour, or come back in 2 hours. Do you want to come back tomorrow? And we were like, no, because like we've had to travel like 45 minutes to get here, and we have to travel 45 minutes back. We'd very much want to be seen today, like we're happy to wait. And when we left, I said to Mike, like, I'm not annoyed that we had to wait those 5 hours, because I just feel so fortunate to be in the position that we're in, to even need a blood test to check that everything's fine, that like there was no complaining from me. I was happy. I would have waited more. We then started telling like a couple more people. I told my family, my cousins. I asked from the beginning like, please don't tell anyone, because we're like not telling anyone, and people said you're already like 3 months, like you can definitely start telling people. And I'm like, I know that, but like I just didn't want to, because honestly it came down to fear, and I feel like fear is very much why I haven't enjoyed telling people. The reason I've announced so late online is very much because of that fear thing as well. And I have not told anyone our actual due date. like only Michael and I know, just because I don't want people to be like, oh, is it born yet? That's apparently quite a stressful thing, so I don't want that. Oh, one thing that I did have as a bad symptom, I got really bad leg cramps, maybe like 3 nights over the summer. Like they were just so bad. They would wake me up in my sleep. Regulating my temperature on holiday was a little bit hard. Like I really couldn't be in the sun, like I would be in the shade. In the grand scheme of things, that was fine. I have been taking these vitamins, that's what the NHS recommend, and they're pretty affordable, so that's what I've been taking. I went on holiday like 3 months pregnant, pretty much. I bought all my clothes in size 14, not size 12, and that was silly because it just felt like all my clothes were like slightly too big for me. I had like no bump. I had a bloat, like my stomach like instantly changed. It just looked a bit like flabbier. There's no bump. Even now at 20 weeks, I can quickly show you. At 20 weeks now, there's not really a huge bump. I mean, I'm kind of leaning forward now. Kind of my regular jeans are kind of a size up. They're getting a little tiny bit tight, and I feel like the leopard print kind of makes them look less. I wasn't sure what to expect when it came to like when I would get a bump. What I would say is that I'm pretty much 5 months and I don't have a bump, but my mum said that it was exactly the same for her. Like in hindsight, I should have bought my clothes a size bigger because yeah, everything kind of just like didn't look that nice in my opinion. Cravings, I have pretty much had no cravings whatsoever. I would say I've had things that I've kind of fancied like I regularly would, but nothing that I've like desperately needed. At the beginning I ate some crackers and like breadsticks because that did kind of help if I was feeling a little bit hungry or a little bit nauseous, but like I said, I've never really had bad nausea throughout this pregnancy so far. But not being hungry would help like not get any nausea like whatsoever. Since actually filming this video, I'm announcing I think in a week's time, and I have my 20-week scan in just under a week, which I'm so excited for because we haven't bought a single thing, and I'm hoping that having this 20-week scan allows me to kind of be a little bit more at peace with the fact that like everything's gonna be fine. Like I honestly haven't thought about anything. Like I have not thought about baby names. I have not thought about just anything like out of pure fear, but I need to because like, I'm halfway through and I am really excited. But I wanna be more excited. I wanna start buying things, and I think that will make it feel more real. Whereas at the moment, it still feels like it's not real, even though we're basically halfway through. I was talking a little bit more about the tiredness in my second trimester video because I think it was actually a little bit more into my second trimester than my first. I was a bit tired in my first, but like next level in my second. I'm fine now, but it took me a while to get here. I think that video, my second trimester video, will be up in December. But if you have any questions, I think I might upload a Q&A depending on if people do have questions, either about IVF, trying to conceive, or pregnancy. Please do let me know. I feel like I've done a fair amount of research because we've been trying to conceive for such a long time. And then finally, if you are trying to conceive in your first trimester, I am sending you all of my love. I really do know what you're going through. It is hard. Oddly, the one thing I had like throughout it was hope, and I really hope that you can also find that hope. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long one. I hope it was somewhat interesting, but maybe not, I don't know. And I'm so sorry about the light, I really am. It's so dark. But if you enjoyed it, join me on Instagram and TikTok and subscribe here because I will be doing a fair amount of pregnancy content, I think. So that's pretty much what I've been dreaming of doing for the last 3 years. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.